Welcome back to the Long Way Back podcast. I'm your host, Timmy Long, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. It's Dr. David Luke. Dave, you're a doctor of psychology.
That's right, yeah.
And you also, you're a professor.
Yeah.
And you work a lot with the different plant medicines, specifically psilocybin.
Yeah, not just psilocybin, but also all plant medicines and also like chemical psychedelics as well, like LSD.
Okay. So you're actually in Cypress Avenue this evening.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
A friend of mine I swear, we were just after contacting you. A friend of mine texted me. She says, Timmy, you won't believe Dr. David Luke is in Cypress Avenue. Shall I have a spare ticket? A friend of mine can't go. Can you come? And I says, I can do one better than that. I says, we're actually doing a podcast from here in the studio. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And thank you so much for joining us. We just give our listeners a little bit of an indication of who you are, where you grew up, and what it was like maybe for you growing up, and how then you went into this area of maybe psychology and then into plant medicines, because the two of them don't really mix, you know. And when I say they don't really mix, it's like when you have a psychologist, they don't really look at plant medicines as a way for somebody to heal with mental health, and then again you do. And I'm sure you know other psychologists who are on the same path as you. So do you want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of who you are and where you come from and how it was growing up for you and stuff?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on the show. I guess I didn't have a particularly interesting or exciting childhood. Just I grew up in a council estate in the Midlands in the UK. We were pretty poor. A big, Irish Catholic family. There was 7 of us. I was the youngest, and got thrown out of school. The usual thing. But I started experimenting with psychedelics when I was a teenager, and wanted to understand the experience. And a mate of mine was a psychologist, actually. I got to hang out with these guys who had been at university, and he was actually a psychology lecturer, and he was really good at trivial pursuits. And that's it made me think about psychology. It's like, he had this way of just breaking down the question to discover what the answer was, right? And it was like, I really like the way his mind works. And I put 2 and 2 together, and I figured I want to study psychology to try and understand my psychedelic experiences that I'd been having, increasingly. So I kind of went back to night school while I was running nightclubs, and did my A-levels and managed to get myself by the skin of my teeth a place in university, and started studying psychology. Did 3 years of a psychology degree. And they taught us absolutely nothing about psychedelic experiences. It was almost like they didn't exist, like the whole part of the spectrum of human experience had been just completely boarded off.
Yeah.
And I was a bit shocked and horrified by that.
Is that still the case today?
Less so, I think. I still don't think there's many courses teach about it. You will find psychedelics in psychology textbooks now for students, but I don't think there's many courses or programs where they teach it. I teach it specifically on the psychology degree I teach on at Greenwich University, as I have for the last 16 years. And that was part of my journey, in that leaving the psychology degree, I kind of ran screaming from the university, ended up in Mexico. I'd had a kind of vision that I, on the train going into work one day, I had this kind of flash of inspiration. I needed to go to Mexico and study shamanism. And I didn't know really much about shamanism, and I knew even less about Mexico. I thought they actually spoke Mexican. But apparently they speak Spanish. But off I went. And but while I was there, I had an experience on peyote in the desert, and it's like you have to go back and you have to do a doctorate and you have to put into the university what you found missing, And I was like, so swimming against the tide. This is like year 2000. This is 24 years ago, when psychedelics was still really taboo. And so I pursued my PhD and started studying psychedelics,
And that was just information you got from a psychedelic trip.
Yeah, that was in a peyote experience in the desert in Mexico.
And it's so strong, like you can't question it. You
Absolutely
can't,
not.
you have
Absolutely
to go
not.
with it, like, because for you to, like, say for instance, now I have a thought. You just kind of classify as a thought, but when you're on a psychedelic, having an psychedelic experience with a plant medicine, the information is so real. It's realer than anything else that goes on in your life. Any information that comes to you, even if somebody tells you something that you have to do something, you still won't take it the same way as you will with a psychedelic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
One thing jumped out at me there as well. Mexico is known as well for the buffalo frog.
That too.
5-MeO. Did you ever do it while you were there?
Not the toad venom itself, but I did try a synthetic version of it. Yeah, about 20 odd years ago, whilst I was in Mexico.
I have tried the actual toad venom myself here. I didn't experience what I thought I would from the research I done. It was like a milder version of a DMT experience. Maybe I wasn't ready to experience it at the time, or maybe the quantity that of the venom wasn't enough, because at the time I was using a bit of DMT, and my psychedelic experiences started with the DMT, and that's where I had a really, really slight experience with love. It was, but later on then I had an experience with, it was the unconditional love that you feel during ayahuasca. That was the game changer for me, as we were speaking about it earlier, and it was like, whoa. And I actually, after that, knew that I was loved. Because of this, while I was being told by this whatever was the mother of, whatever it may be, Mother Ayahuasca, some people, the universe, other people call it, when I was being loved, my head was saying, but sure, you done this, you can't be loved because you done this, or you done that. And it's like, no, you're loved. Doesn't matter what you do. I don't care what you do in love. You will always, always be loved. Doesn't matter. And it's just like, it was like, I spent the whole night that night crying and laughing. You know, there was a lot of sadness based on, it was like I could feel the pain that the earth was having at the moment from what we were doing to it. Yeah. Just taking every real goodness from it, you know, and I could feel the pain of it, and it was like, the psychedelics have been a massive part of my recovery process.
Amazing.
You know?
Yeah.
So how did they actually help you around your own kind of life? Did it help you to understand different things that was going on for you emotionally and maybe mentally?
Yeah, at many points in my life, they usually show me when I'm doing things which, like, I need to change my behaviors and my habits. Often, you get a wake up call and a bit of a slap, and it's like, come on, man, why are you living like this? You know?
Yeah.
It really helped and give me a lot of guidance and ideas as well, you know, about the direction I've taken my life in. I've been lucky in that I haven't struggled so much with my mental health over the years, but maybe because I don't know, because I've always been taking psychedelics since I was a teenager, and so that might have been, I always had that, you know, to help me unravel my issues. I'm not saying I haven't had problems, but
it's like it gives you that bit of clarity that you can't really get when we're running around, and let's be honest, like, everybody is chasing their tail at the moment. It's like we're living in a fucking cage, running around. And I was only speaking to a brother of mine there recently, and I was saying, Tommy, I said, I'm in a rush to get here, to get there, to get here. And it's like, I'm actually in a rush to fucking go into a box and put into a 6 foot hole. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's where the finish line is, because I'm so rushed off my feet at the moment. And I says, I have to pull back. And there was so much, and usually I would get the information from psychedelics, but I haven't done any psychedelics. I do a bit of microdosing and psilocybin, but I haven't done any ayahuasca, or I done Wachuma there last year. Really different experience to the ayahuasca. Really, really different. And I haven't done nothing since. But this time I made a really, really, really strong decision based on what I believe was right for me, and it felt right. And since I made the decision, it was like, God, I feel great. I feel really, really good. Brilliant. But my plans are to do, as I was speaking, to do maybe, and just for anybody listening here, this is a recovery-based podcast as well. I'm 13 years away from a drink or drug, and that's no excuse. Amazing. Like, I feel really good in myself. I would never, ever, ever tell anybody that's in early recovery or in recovery in general, that's your own personal decision if you want to use psychedelics. I'm not telling to use them. I will speak about my experiences, and that's it. I'm still in recovery, still go to meetings, but sometimes psychedelics give me what other things can't. And I mean therapy, group sessions with different people. So just to let people know, I'm not telling you to go and use psychedelics to get well. That'll be your own personal decision when you come to that crossroads. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. I think it has to be everyone's personal decision. But not all drugs are the same, are they? Like psychedelics have been classed as this type of so-called recreational, prohibited, illegal drug. And, so people think of it in the same way as they do heroin or cocaine or crack. And yet some of the categorization is a bit of a myth, really, isn't it? Because, psychedelics, the classic psychedelics like psilocybin from magic mushrooms, for instance, aren't really addictive as far as we can tell, for one thing, in the same way other drugs may be. Whereas some drugs which aren't illegal, like alcohol and tobacco, really are addictive.
And caffeine.
Yeah, and caffeine too, yeah. And sugar. Yeah.
Turn that off. Caffeine is highly addictive.
yeah. But I love a nice cup of tea.
I drink all decaf.
Great.
And decaf tea. I'll have a decaf coffee. Just based on, because my own reasons, because I actually find that I get anxious when I drink any form of caffeine. It just really makes me anxious, and it's not good for me. And I made a decision just to cut it out of my life. And it was probably the best decision I made. But back in the time I did give it up, it was like 3 days I didn't sleep. I was getting migraine pains in my head like I never experienced before. And then it stopped. And it was like for 2 weeks after that, I was completely zonked. Like I had no energy. But then my energy levels just came back to normal.
Amazing.
And so everything was good. How do you mix psychology and your work with psychedelics together and make it understandable for your students, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, so we kind of try and base it in like mainstream psychology, and a lot of it's to do with mental health or, positive changes in personality. It does fit into the world of psychology. It's been kind of left out because it's been such a taboo, and these substances, even now, still in the UK and everywhere else, most places, are in this legal category, the highest schedule of drugs. And so, that they don't even have medical licenses for them to be used. So that's how the misfit occurs with ordinary psychology. But my own research, I've done some clinical trials looking at the safety and tolerability of LSD mostly, and I've collaborated with lots of researchers. But I look at the psychological factors that ensue when people take psychedelics, and I often look at the really far out stuff as well, like spiritual experiences or kind of people having like paranormal experiences and things like that. But also how people deal with difficult experiences, because the one thing about psychedelics is that they tend to be very physically safe. They have very low toxicity. They have very few physical side effects. LSD, psilocybin, it's pretty much impossible to overdose on. No one's died of an overdose, as far as we're aware. Maybe one person in the 1920s on psilocybin. We don't know if that was real. But the risks are psychological, in that some people can have, a challenging experience, and that may have a long tail, and they may have some psychological fallout. That hasn't been looked at very much. So we're starting to do a lot of research on that, for instance. So just so we can find ways of making these things safer for everybody, and that we can maximize the benefits for people and reduce the risks.
That makes so much sense, what you're saying about people that use psychedelics, and I always mention it as well. If you haven't got any work done already and you're doing psychedelics and information comes to you and you're kind of held back, your experience can be really, really negative.
Yeah. It can be challenging.
Really challenging. And I remember my first ayahuasca experience was with this company, these group of people, and they were absolutely, and I mean this now, truly amazing.
Great.
My experience was powerful. They facilitated it unbelievably. Music was really, really the integration of the music and myself was like nothing I'd ever experienced, and everything went well, but I had long years of work done myself with psychotherapy and understanding my own traumas and different things, and I'd also learned how to deal with information when it comes to me from wherever. And the way I deal with it is by just allowing it and sitting with it and feeling it. But some people, if they don't have the work done, and they do psychedelics and stuff comes up, because I always say this, there's no sugarcoating information with psychedelics.
No, definitely not.
It comes straight to it and it's there. And I've heard of a lot of people losing their minds and jumping into the car during a session and trying to drive home. I was at one session where a fucking guy jumped into his car and took off. He got a few kilometers down the road only, thankfully, and he was living 400 kilometers away. I don't know how the fuck he was even going to get to where he was going. So I didn't even know this shit was happening, because I'm dealing with my own shit on the floor. It wasn't until I was coming down there, someone said to me, "Fuck, did you see what happened?" I said, I didn't know what was going on for my fucking self, never mind anything else. Go on,
Dave, have you done much research around, sorry, I'm going to take these off, it sounds weird. Have you done much research around like the use of ayahuasca or ibogaine for addiction cessation?
I mean, I haven't done any direct research myself, but I'm really familiar with the research that's been going on, for years. The thing is, when psychedelics were first discovered by Western scholars, people have known about them for thousands of years, right? But in the kind of 1950s, the first thing they used them for was treating addictions, and they were extremely successful. Particularly alcoholism initially, and then over the years, iboga was particularly used for treating heroin addiction. It's quite unique in that regard, because not only does it help people get off their habitual use of heroin, but it also resets people's tolerances, and so they don't have any withdrawal experiences either.
It's like an opiate blocker, is it?
Yeah, it has a kind of neurochemical reset, which is quite unique to iboga. So it's particularly useful for dealing with heroin addiction. But it turns out ayahuasca, psilocybin, LSD have all been shown to be really effective in dealing with addictions, probably more so than many or any other treatment program, even tobacco addiction. There hasn't been enough research on this, but in one study, they gave people 2 high doses of magic mushrooms of psilocybin, and they followed them up for a year later. These are all heavy tobacco users, and 2/3 of them abstained for at least a year. They followed them up 12 months later. 2/3 of them had quit, not had another cigarette. It's
powerful.
That's a lot of people. So.
And even the iboga is supposed to be good for heroin addiction.
Definitely, yeah.
Because when I was actually doing my first retreat, there was somebody there doing iboga, and they were going through a different, and it was like, this was tough. This was intense. I could hear him from the floor down, what was going on for him, and it was really difficult. And when they came through afterwards, it was like, they had a really difficult look in their face.
I was told before that some people experience is every wrongdoing that they've ever caused to another individual, that they experience it as if it was happening to themselves, which allows them to somehow process the pain, to be able to cope with not going back to the drug.
And that brings and Tony,
it's intense stuff.
Like that brings us back to what I was saying earlier on. Like if you're not able to take that information while it comes to you, or you're not able to allow yourself to feel all the fucking shame and fear and guilt that you're feeling for what you have done to other people, you could be in a really difficult spot.
Yeah.
You have to be under medical supervision as well, right?
Do you know what?
With ibogaine specifically?
I don't really know. I don't know. And maybe David could explain that a little bit better. But for me, I think the facilitators, people who work with these plant medicines all for years and years and years, they know how to mind you, like.
But I think with ibogaine, it's actually like a lot longer. The DMT stays in your system for, it can be like 2 to 3 days. Maybe I'm mistaken.
Iboga is a bit different to others. Like it does. I mean, the effects last about 36 hours. It's a hell of a long trip. You often get this kind of life review thing you talk about. You know, like you basically relive your whole life, not just remembering it, but like reliving it. And so you have a lot of pause for thought for things that have occurred. But it is, unlike the other psychedelics, it's is a bit physiologically risky. Like people can have heart failure, so they have to screen people really, ideally, for like make sure you haven't got any heart abnormalities. People do occasionally die from iboga treatment. Less so with almost never with ayahuasca and psilocybin and LSD.
It's probably more related to the withdrawal symptoms. Would it be?
Well, there's 2 risks, with iboga. One is like heart failure from the drug itself, from the iboga. If you've got a weak heart, you probably shouldn't take iboga. And the other thing is that because it resets people's tolerances, and the majority of people quit heroin, but if you were to go back and take heroin again, especially at the same dosage you took it before, it would kill you. It would overdose, because your tolerances have disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a powerful plant medicine. You need to really know what you're doing that.
And could you tell us a little bit about the science behind microdosing, or the research behind microdosing?
Yeah, so microdosing is a little bit more controversial, like scientifically. We know that big doses like really help with, depression, anxiety, addictions, PTSD, end of life, existential fear. And like in the last decade or so, there's been a real interest in microdosing. But it's kind of more like DIY science. People are, microdosing, and then they do fill in these surveys and say it's been really helpful for dealing with my depression or feeling more kind of focused at work. And, people are taking it for lots of different reasons. And so like when you look at that, what people say about their experiences, it's really, really positive. People are saying, it really helped with my depression, helped me with my focus at work, reduced my anxiety. But then, like scientists started studying it clinically with like in a controlled setting with a placebo condition in a blind way. So nobody knows whether they're getting the real microdose or a placebo, right? And the idea of a microdose, according to scientists, is it should be below the level at which you can feel anything. It's like it's sub threshold, right? You shouldn't be able to feel it if you're microdosing. And under those conditions, when they study it, they find that actually, yes, people report benefits, they demonstrate benefits, but they also get the benefits in the placebo condition. Or sometimes you get better effects with the drug, but that's for those people who what we call break the blind. They would go, if you ask them, do you think you're on the experimental drug or not? And if they say yes, they're more likely to have improvement. So there are some things which have been shown, but a lot of the effects are not very strong in controlled studies, right? But that doesn't mean it isn't doing anything beneficial.
But the molecular structure of psilocybin is really similar to dopamine, right?
More structurally similar to serotonin.
Serotonin.
Yeah. So what we think is going on, what I think is going on partially is that a lot of people, like a lot of my friends who microdose go, I started microdosing. I couldn't really feel very much, so I took a little bit more, and it's like, so they're kind of maybe just slightly tripping a little bit, just like feeling like oh yeah, I can feel something. Everything's just got a little sparkle to it, not really tripping because they've got to work and function, but they've got a little glint in their eye, and that could be the difference. Or that the clinical trials they're over short periods, they're in very artificial environments, they usually only do it for like a week or two. So there's a bit of a mismatch between what people report, and most people tend to report very positive effects from microdosing, and what we see in controlled studies. Saying that, we know that microdosing does increase what we call neuroplasticity, the creation of new brain cells and connections. So it should be doing something beneficial, but the really controlled studies don't really show very much. So so expectation seems to be important. It's a bit like, it's not just that it's a placebo, but that there is a lot of expectations around the power of a microdose of a psychedelic. If you think what a full dose of like ayahuasca can do to you, how it can be so life-changing and transformative. Imagine that, but in a kind of vitamin form that you can take every day or every other day, but you don't have to trip balls and deal with all the kind of, the psychological fallout.
Some people do microdose with the ayahuasca as well.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, and even I'm working with a lady at the moment on the microdosing, the psilocybin. And a lot of people use the capsules, and they're grinded up mushroom, put into capsules and stuff. The way I'm working is I have it in a bottle and it drops.
Great.
So it's actually is taken, it's extracted from the mushroom and it's put in a bottle, and
that's better for getting it all even.
It's all even then. It's even. And it's like the first 2 months I was on it, I was off it for a month. Then I went back on it for 2 months. I was off for a month and a half, and then I'm back on my third session now for 2 months, and then I'm finished.
Yeah.
It was like, it takes a year. It's nearly a year to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said there about the controversy around microdosing kind of made a little bit of sense to me, because sometimes the dosage isn't really strong.
No.
For you to actually know the effects. But when I'm not on it, right, because I've been on it for 3 times now, this is my third time. When I'm not on it, and when I'm on it, I do notice that I am a little bit sharper. The flow of my language is a little bit better.
Great.
It's not as what would be the right word? It doesn't kind of stop and pause as much. It's just flows. My thinking is a little bit better. I do feel a little bit calmer inside.
Yeah.
A little bit. But then there's such a massive step then from microdosing to taking maybe 3 or 4 grams of
it's totally different animal.
It's like, whoa, and a lot of people get mind-blowing experiences from mushroom sessions. And we spoke about myself doing a microdosing session at some stage down the line, facilitated again, and with the right people, just maybe for myself to get a little bit of clarity out of it. Do you microdose or use any of the plant medicines yourself much these days, Dave?
Not so much. I'm more of a macrodose kind of guy anyway, right? I did try microdosing, but I'm just I'm not very good with having a regime, my life's pretty chaotic. It's like, and I'd also worry about leaving like something like that around the house for my daughter to find. You know what I mean? So, but like I don't trip as much as I used to. I've tripped a lot in my lives. A lot of it for research purposes, and some of it for my own personal growth. But I'll tend to do just a few plant medicine ceremonies a year these days, and that's kind of all it needs, like.
So,
and that's kind of the thing what we see from the clinical trials, for treating depression, for instance, people get benefits immediately, the majority of people, and it'll last 3 to 6 months, for most of them. Some of them, that's good enough. They like that their depression's gone. But the most of them, after 3 to 6 months, they'll feel it kind of creeping back, and it's like, okay, it's like taking the car in for a service, isn't it? Like just kind of like periodically. So it's not like it's a one shot fix all kind of thing, It's,
seasonally.
Yeah, it's kind of seasonally. Yeah, literally seasonally. Yeah, like maybe 4 times a year is probably enough to just like keep everything in balance, really.
Yeah, it's really, and it's not like you have the urge to take more cocaine or crack cocaine. It's like you get a calling for it. And I always explain it like that. It just kind of organically happens for me. I don't go looking for it or anything like that. It's just like something happens. It comes into my life, and it's maybe I need to do this, and I go off and I do it. The last time I done ayahuasca, okay, I went to this place in Wicklow, in the middle of nowhere, no coverage or nothing, no. And I was on the phone to Nicole going over the Wicklow Mountains, and the phone went dead completely. No, 2 days later I contact her. Nicole was after phoning every retreat centre in Ireland. I was saying, my husband has gone on a retreat. Is he there with you? I don't know where he is. I haven't spoken to him in 2 days. And then, sure, I'm fucking completely zoned out wherever I am. Like, and one fella turns around to me and says, don't you worry. He's fine, don't you worry. Wherever he's gone, he's getting what he needs.
Sure.
And she said, what the fuck? But I rang her after the 2 days, and I answered the phone. I said, hi. She started roaring, crying. Then she told me there was literally guards and all she was after calling. She thought I was after driving, falling off a fucking mountain in Wicklow. But during that experience, I remember we had a shaman this time. He came in.
Great.
There was 2 of them there. There was a female and a male. Both of them were singing. And the room was in darkness, complete dark, different to the first session. The first session, there was a bit of light, really dim light. There was heat, but this one, not really. It wasn't the same. So I was cold, and I couldn't see in front of me, and I was nearly half afraid to ask for another cup. But something happened to me in the second night. I was lying down on the bed, and I kept getting this bit of information. Something kept saying to me, like, don't stand up, don't move over. And I said, what the fuck is going on here? And I just done what I was told. And I just questioned. I said, what's going on? And they just said, we're operating on your heart.
Wow.
We're actually fixing your heart. And I lay there and I said, what the fuck? And then I just said, because you don't say these things, it's all mind.
Yeah.
And I told them, and they said, that's okay, we can work from the side.
Right.
And I was like, unbelievably it was a crazy experience. But I was there for three nights, and I ended up just staying there for 2 in the end, because something was telling me as well that I need to go home to my wife.
Yeah.
And I rang her the next day, and it was justified.
Yeah, wasn't it?
It was like, Jesus Christ. So listen, there's powerful things. What other kind of plant medicines do you teach that are really helpful for people?
I mean, I spent the last 12 or 13, 14 years now working with a tribe from Mexico. They're known as the Huichol. They call themselves the Hueradica, but they work with peyote. I wouldn't necessarily suggest people work with peyote, only because it's like hard to find, and it's kind of endangered, and like there's you can get cactus from Huachuma and San Pedro cactus. You can get mescaline from that, and it's peyote is probably more problematic in terms of its availability. But I've worked with them a lot over the years, and that's been absolutely mind blowing. They're like really extraordinary people, come across a group of people who, as collectively as a community, have been using plant medicines for thousands of years. Probably there's been evidence of peyote use in that region going back 5,500 years, and they haven't really changed their way of life at all in that time. 500 years of occupation by the Spaniards or whatever, and they kept all their traditions intact, and they're extraordinary people. You know, they have no real government to talk of. They have a clown police force that basically they're just there to kind of keep the right mood going. That's their job. If people are too sad when they should be happy, they act the fool and make people laugh. If people are too jovial when they should be serious, they hit them with a stick. And
is it like a modernized tribe?
Well, they're part of the 21st century world. You know, they drive around in pickup trucks and stuff, okay. But they're like their traditions, they haven't really changed at all. And they'll go on a pilgrimage every year, 1,000 kilometers across the desert, go and pick their peyote, bring it back. That's their only medicine. You know, they don't use any other medicine, plant medicine or psychedelic or even any kind of medicine. It's just everything. They get all their healing from their use of peyote, and they'll take it from age 5 to about 105, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
From that young?
Yeah.
So their children really they must be really tuned into what's going on from.
They seem really tuned in, yeah, for sure. It's part of their culture and their tradition.
They'd be the type of shamans that I tend to trust, you know, when it's part of their culture for a really long time. It's kind of hard not to judge a lot of the kind of Western modernized shamans that are around the place, essentially going around the place, selling drugs to vulnerable people, you know, claiming that it can heal them, you know. So I just kind of thought it was important to say that, like, you know.
Well, it has been commercialized. The plant medicine have been commercialized in different, like, and that's a big deal today.
Yeah,
you know, and it's for profit. You know, but I also understand then for a lot of these people to do what they do and help people, they need money as well. But it's a really sacred thing.
Yeah,
you know, I've never experienced anything in my life like this stuff, like ayahuasca or the wachuma, you know, or even for that instance, the DMT.
Yeah,
you know, the DMT really kind of, when you break through in the DMT and you're in the right setting and stuff, it can be really, really powerful, the information, and give you exactly what you need at that moment in time.
Yeah,
and but then you can be told you've had, like at the end I was told, you've got everything you need. No, we don't repeat the stuff. We're done with, you know. Like,
I got that message too.
Did you?
I stupidly went back, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I didn't go back again.
It can be like, I was like, nah, there's no more for us to give, you know. You'll have to kind of go in. It's some people.
You got what you need now.
Yeah, if you don't listen and you go back, then it's like, you usually tend, for me anyway, personally, I'd have a bad time then, you know, it'd be very loud. Is there much, I've had plenty of bad trips, but is there much research around what a bad trip actually is specifically?
So we've been looking into it the last few years. We've got a project called
Good question.
The Challenging Psychedelic Experience Project, because like everyone was kind of banging on about all the brilliant benefits to it, but not many people have been looking into those people who have like what we used to call bad trips, now we call challenging psychological experiences, right? And there can be various triggers, you know, and they can come in different shapes, really. So for some people, it can just be like a horror trip, or people can some people suffer in that they have like persisting visual changes, you know, which is one particular thing, and that's probably a physiological effect. Most of it's psychological, though. Some people often get a lot of dissociation. They just feel like they're out of their body and they're disconnected. Everything feels unreal. You get a lot of depersonalization. You know, they don't feel right. So like people actually, although like psychedelics tend to like make most people feel way more connected to everything afterwards, you know, with the people, the room, the universe, everything. Some people can come out of it feeling more disconnected. You know, they can feel dissociated from themselves. So that's kind of one of the negative side effects that can occur. Sometimes people have what we call like ontological shock. Ontology is like your sense of reality. And
I'm
it's
alive.
Like, just like it can just, shock your sense of your worldview. Like you're maybe not prepared for how mind-blowing it is. And, you know, you fall down the gaps between your old worldview and what the experience presents you. And it's like, that can be hard to integrate, right? Because you're right, Timmy. It's like often these things are sacred experiences. People have often very spiritual experiences, and what the research is showing is like the more spiritual the experience is, the more likely people are going to give up drinking, quit smoking, get over their depression, anxiety, all that, you know.
Yeah.
So there can be a shock in that as well for some people.
Yeah, there can, because the information that you get, Tony, specifically for you, you know, every time I've gotten information, it was always based on what was going on in my life and what I should be doing or what I shouldn't be doing. And that's completely up to you then to take that information and to do something with it.
For me, it was always facing my mortality. I was always becoming hyper aware of the fact that one day I was going to die.
I'm fascinated by that with people when they talk about death. Like my wife, no, she's a woman. She's in her mid-30s. Mm-hmm. And she talks about maybe getting old or whatever. And for me, it never ever enters my mind, because I know that dying is a part of being alive.
Yeah.
And getting old and grey and saggy and wrinkly is part of everything else as well. So I never really, and I know what it's like to fucking be at death's door. Jesus Christ, you have to know that you have to allow yourself to be dead to get into a lot of these different plant medicines, because it strips your ego back.
Yeah.
Like the DMT there is like you have to surrender, like you feel like you're dying, but it's the death of the ego, and you feel like you're actually going to die. I've had one fella here, he thought I was trying to fucking kill him because he couldn't surrender into the ego.
Yeah.
And he said, "What the fuck you have to do to me?" And I said, "Okay, relax." And I said, "You're fine." Because he couldn't surrender he couldn't allow the whole process to work. It's just, you have to leave everything. For me, life is just, everything just works out the way it's supposed to be, and it's all for you. It's never not for you. Whether you believe it's the right decision or the wrong decision, you have to understand that it's right for you on your path. You know, and
beautifully said.
Well, fuck it, Tony. I've really understood it to be that way in the last maybe 5 or 6 years since I started this stuff with the plant medicines and stuff, and just meditation.
Great.
Meditation is powerful, like, especially with this stuff. Meditation and this stuff together is mind-blowing, because it gives you the opportunity to allow and accept what's going on. And when I say accept, like, some people think you're just accepting something just because you have to. It's not like this. It's about accepting that you're going to get old. It's about accepting that you're getting grey, you know, or you're getting fat, as my small fella always calls me.
I don't know why you're looking at me when you say all that.
But yeah, life is a powerful thing. But going back to what you said there, like, I'd say a lot of people struggle with that
facing mortality.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really struggle with it.
Most people don't like even thinking about it, you know, or never mind talking about it, you know.
But did it help you, like, face your mortality a bit by having that experience? I
think the first time when I was about 16, it was just completely overwhelming. It was like panic-inducing, kind of like, it took me a while to recover after it. But then as time went on and I started experimenting with higher doses, I like full on witnessed my own death. I stood above myself and watched it, and I was disassociating. I thought I was everything in all directions, that I was God, and then I was myself, and it was like moving between all these kind of thoughts while like lying on the floor, rolling around, you know. And then coming out of that, processing it, integrating after a couple of months, you know. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, that was a big trip, right? It probably took a while to kind of process and integrate it. But you come out better, less scared of death the other side?
I think that it's something that I'm more interested in the experience rather than something that I feel like I'm afraid of. It's like wondering what's going to happen, you know, because no one really knows, you know. So,
yeah. It's true. It seems like that was particularly with people end of their life, you know, people have stage 4 cancer, and that seems to, like, psychedelic treatment, psilocybin, is shown to be really brilliant for helping people in that stage of life where they have people have a lot of depression, anxiety, they've got, a terminal diagnosis, and they have this mind-blowing spiritual experience, a bit like yours perhaps, and they see that actually maybe death isn't what they thought it was, and they come out of it being much less scared about dying typically, and then that helps them have a better, more prepared death. Their depression, anxiety tends to go away, and they're even able to like reduce the amount of end-of-life drugs they're taking, and just people feel more better able and ready to die.
Just less stress, basically.
Yeah, a lot of stress. Yeah,
that's powerful. Like I follow this guy as well. He was great. He was great maybe 5-6 years ago when I was really struggling. His name was Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he does a lot of own meditation and stuff, and visualization and what you like. But I was at this retreat in Brighton, and it was a 7-day meditation retreat. And I was sitting next to these two guys in the audience, and one guy's name was, I think his name was Niall, and the brother, let's call him Rob. And I was chatting, I said, "How are you getting on?" And he said, "Yeah, good. And he's telling me the story why they were there. And he said, "Yeah, my brother, he had terminal cancer. He was dying. He stage 4 cancer. He had lesions in the brain, cancer. He was just literally dying."
Yeah.
And he started doing the work, like visualizing himself healthy. And through meditation, he was able to feel like he was this person who was not sick.
Amazing.
And he was able to change everything about him, the biology of his mind. No, he was left, the cancer was gone.
Amazing.
This was powerful stuff. The cancer was gone, but he still had a speech impediment because of the lesions that were on the brain and all these different things, and he had a bit of a limp. But when I see this stuff happening, in front of my eyes, that was the real kind of introduction for me, the mystical world, the plant medicine world, the spiritual world. I really didn't know too much about it because I was just always caught up in my head about the negative based on my core beliefs about myself and about the world and about everything, my environment. And I was like, from that moment on, I never kind of really looked back and said, there's nothing impossible. If somebody wants something bad enough and they really will put the work in, you will get it. And this man was living proof in front of me.
Amazing.
And it was powerful.
Yeah.
And the funny story based on that retreat, our hotel was in front of the beach in Brighton. It was the Savoy, I think. And we went out to do an early morning meditation on the beach one morning. And there was about fucking 1,100 people now coming out of the hotel, right? I'm not kidding with you. So we're all out on the beach, walking the path. It was a walking meditation. And we all had the headphones in and we were all in sync, like. We're walking around and we're all looking out into the horizon. And it was still dark, and winters, I think it was November. And you postmen going around doing the post, milkmen, fellas going to shopping centres, all looking at us. Next I look at this one fella, right? And I'm looking out at the ocean and the sun just shining on this. And I'm looking out and I'm looking like that. Next I look at your man and he's like, he's like this. He's trying to see what I'm looking at. Next year, a headline on the front of the paper, hundreds and hundreds of people out looking for UFOs on the beach the day before. And I said, what the fuck? I said, what? But it was like, brilliant. It was absolutely powerful, and it was funny as well for me, just looking at people walking their dogs.
Yeah, really.
What the fuck is going on here, But it's about how much and how willing you're willing to open up your mind and allow new stuff in.
Yeah.
And practicing that as well.
Yeah.
And just I think the biggest part of it really for me is just believing that there's more to what we know.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to what we know in life, and it's about giving everything an opportunity, because I never really stick with anything. I touch off a bit of the psychotherapy, the NA, the plant medicine stuff, meditation, and just sitting myself and whatever I feel is going to be beneficial for me. Even the ice baths now and the saunas, they're powerful. Yesterday now I spent 25 minutes in an ice bath. It was
That's
between
fucking dangerous,
two. Where I spent 10 I spent 10 minutes and 10 minutes and then come out.
Incredible.
I have a little bit of a cold note this morning over it, but like it was really powerful. I felt every single vessel of my body afterwards. I was shaking and trembling, but it's just, I was defrosting then inside in the sauna, and it was so powerful. I left that session afterwards and it was like, holy fuck. My body was just after getting regenerated. It was powerful.
Yeah.
And I've often felt like that as well with plant medicines.
Yeah.
Like completely de-stressed. If I was anxious or nothing, it was like when you break through, and especially the DMT, when you break through in the DMT, it's like everything is gone. Any anxiety, anything that's really going on for you at the moment is gone, and you come out of it, it's like there's a calmness in here. It's like you can't explain it. It was absolutely powerful.
Yeah.
So talk about you're here in Cypress Avenue tonight.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
So what does your show look like? What's the whole lineup? What do you teach people?
Well,
is it for the beginner?
There's a lot of bad jokes, mostly, which don't go down very well. But then, just talking about the science of psychedelics, really. Like what's happening in the last 10, 15 years in research, like because these things weren't researched from like the end of the 60s onwards for about 50 years. They were just like, everyone tried to pretend they didn't exist in science, and now people have been doing the research on them and showing their benefits in mental health. So I talk a little bit about how we think they work in the brain, how they change people psychologically, how they can benefit mental health, what the risks and benefits are. That's just a bit of an overview. Most of the real gold comes out when we have like a question and answer at the end, and people can just ask any old question they want. It's been quite amazing. I've been doing these talks now for quite a few years, and like just the people who come along, and it's just ordinary people, and in their droves, and everybody's really interested in psychedelics now. A lot of people have had their experiences, and the amount of stories I hear of people, having had profound breakthroughs and helping them deal with all kinds of issues. It's quite amazing, really.
Yeah. Do you have access to psilocybin for research in the UK?
Yeah, everyone always wants to know where you want some? No, I know. Well, it is possible to do research with it. There's some research happening now in Ireland as well. You need a home office license in the UK, for handle Schedule 1 drugs, which are only a few universities actually have that kind of access. So it is possible to do. I don't have that kind of access at my university, but there are a few places doing that, and there's people trying to develop it in clinical trials to get it licensed as a medicine. There's a campaign in the UK as well to change the scheduling around psilocybin so that people can get access to it, to do research, and B, possibly to get access to it as a medicine. In the same way, people have only just got access to cannabis in the UK as a medicine after decades of campaigns. So there's a push towards that with psilocybin. Not sure. It's probably a pretty similar situation here in Ireland, I think, legally, which is kind of crazy because, this time of year it's out there growing in the fields, and it comes from nature and physically very safe, but there are psychological risks. So, but it's kind of crazy that we have this substance which has a lot of medical potential, but has been illegal to access for 60, 70 years. Meanwhile, people can drink 20 pints of a night, and that's perfectly fine, right? It's like this. So the laws are going to change. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and when they change in the UK, they'll change here because we always follow.
Seems like it.
Yeah, we always do follow. And it's when you were talking about here in Ireland, somebody was telling me we actually have the best mushroom that you can get.
I've heard that
most
too.
Potent mushroom.
Liberty cap.
What are they called?
The Liberty cap.
Liberty cap. And no, it's years since I done. A funny story. A friend of mine, years and years ago, we were out cycling our bikes. We were only 12 or 13 at the time, and we went up to his house, and his brother was at home having a cup of tea inside the house. I went in, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. He says, "Do you want a cup of tea, Timmy?" I said, "I will." I said, "I will, yeah." So I sat down and had a cup of tea, and I was drinking the tea away, and fuck it, caught up kind of laughing once or twice, and I turned around and I says, "Fuck, what kind of tea bags are there?" He says, "There's an awful taste of compost off them tea bags," I says to him. He says, "Nah, boy, they're fuckers. My mum got them in the shop. I don't know where she got them." So I thought nothing of it, and fucking drove home. It was a bit strange now driving up the road. I said, "What the fuck is going on?" I went home and I called down. I was down the next day, and he says, "How'd you get on last night when you left?" He says. I says, "Grand, why?" He says, he opened the fucking pot. There was a load of magic mushrooms inside the pot.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know the same guy now, God rest his soul. He died last year.
Oh.
But fuck it, funny old stories like that,
isn't it?
You know. But
it makes me wonder why you put in my tea now. Is that? We'll have another taste of that.
But yeah, fuck it. I think we're definitely moving in the direction, Dave, of looking at what can really benefit people a little bit more, because we're very emotional beings. You can tell us all the information that you have that's out there in order for us to understand why we feel the way we feel based on our upbringing or the environment we're living in. But sometimes the information doesn't soothe us emotionally, okay? No. But the plant medicines have a great way of helping us to get in touch with that emotional side of ourselves, where therapy and all the information in the world won't.
Sure.
You know? And I think, I don't know, listen, it's not a conspiracy. I think the reasons being we're not using the likes of psilocybin, ketamine, MDMA, and other medicines that are there that can help people with their mental health already, is based on the drugs that are out there already from big pharma companies.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably the reality of it. Because there's so many. I remember when I used to do ecstasy when I was a kid. I fucking loved it. The way it made me feel about myself and everybody around me.
Amazing.
Like, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I didn't like the come down, no half of it. But it was the love. Can you imagine making somebody who's completely depressed feel like that for a few hours?
Yeah.
Like, that's the greatest gift you can give anybody. Mm-hmm. You know, but again, it would have to be facilitated, it would have to be legal, and all these different things, you know. So I don't know. We'll see how things go on in the next 10, 15 years in both England and Ireland, and hopefully we can change it.
It's moving in the right direction, I think. Yeah. Finally, you know, after decades and decades. And people, you know, I think a lot of people know, like, the benefit of these things, the potential benefit of them. We're not in the 60s again. We know there are a few risks, right? But we also know that they can be, if used in the right way, really, really beneficial. And we're pretty savvy about how to use them in the right way these days, right?
I think so, yeah. And it's also important for somebody that is going down the route of a plant medicine or anything at all to find the right person to talk to and do your research.
Yeah.
And give it a good bit of thought. And particularly for anybody that's in addiction, who's in recovery or whatever else, maybe talk to somebody you're really close to about it, you know, because there's a lot of people don't go near these different things.
It must be, sorry Timmy, sorry to interrupt you.
A lot of people don't go around plant medicines based on their recovery. They think that, like the likes of psilocybin is drugs and it'll bring them back to square one.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like AA, like, you know, it's all about total abstinence, isn't it? And yet, like I say, you know, not all drugs are the same. These aren't habit forming, particularly. They're not addictive, particularly, like psilocybin, LSD, ayahuasca. And yeah, even the founder of the AA, Bill Wilson, he recovered from alcoholism by taking datura, a psychedelic, basically. I mean, I wouldn't recommend anybody try that, but he was also an advocate in the early days of the potential of LSD for treating addictions.
Heard the steps were based on that.
Yeah.
I heard the 12
exactly,
steps were written on while they were using LSD and different medicines, like.
Yeah, but then in the end they went down you have to be abstinent from everything kind of route. But the guy who kind of started AA had his own psychedelic trip, which got him off alcohol.
Look how much that's after changing the world.
Yeah.
You know, those 12 steps. Many lives are after being saved because of them. You know, I know they saved my life. What you say, Tony?
I was wondering about the screening process that's involved in people that get into these studies.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like if someone has depression, how do you screen through different people if there's like comorbidity there or this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, they're quite artificial in that way, unfortunately, and that's the nature of like clinical research. Is like they want people who have depression, but not anything else. Like, and that they're actually in a very small group, because if you have depression, you tend to also have anxiety, and you might also have, like, it might be part of like neurodivergence or eating disorders or addictions, right? So it's artificial in that respect. They kind of take a small slice of people with depression and only depression, and they'll focus on that. But what psychedelic research is showing is that it's probably time to rethink how we do psychiatry in general, because, you know, these psychedelic treatments seem to work for depression, for anxiety, for addictions, for end of life, existential fear, for PTSD. And so it's about not thinking about this person is depressed and nothing else. It's about thinking about what needs do that person have, you know, what are their symptoms and how can we best alleviate them. And so there's a move towards what's called transdiagnostic psychiatry, which is you go beyond just the diagnosis, forget diagnoses, and it's like, what does that person need, you know, right now? There may be some important points about diagnosis in this respect, in that some people may be at risk from taking psychedelics of worsening symptoms. And they always screen out people with psychosis or mania, bipolar. But we don't necessarily know if that is particularly risky. And the early research coming through seems to suggest that psychosis actually isn't a big risk factor, but people with bipolar disorder may be more likely to develop mania if they take psychedelics. So yeah, there's some reasons for maybe screening out some people, but we're not entirely 100% sure on who those people should be.
It must be a really difficult process to find people that are just depressed.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's totally artificial. Yeah, I think they make up the minority of people who have a diagnosis of depression. They'll also have something else.
Do people know that they're entering into a study that's based around psilocybin?
Yeah, I mean, because of the process of like giving people fully informed consent, they have to know exactly, you know, they get all the details of what it is they're taking and what the side effects potentially might be. It's really unethical to deceive people in clinical research.
Imagine if something happened to somebody. I've watched the documentary on Netflix. There was, I think they had a psychologist, psychologist, was it? Psychiatrist, music, and there was somebody going through the psilocybin.
Yeah.
Inside in a room with music. The lights were soft, and I think it was 3 people they brought through the process of it.
Yeah.
For I think different doses at different times. It was an interesting documentary. It's on Netflix. You might have watched it already, but I think if you could get into an awful lot of trouble if you told somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wasn't sure. Was it like how blind the studies are? Do you know?
Well, yeah, they say try and have a placebo condition in the studies, but then that's a bit problematic, because most people tend to know once you've had a high dose of psilocybin. Like it's quite easy to tell. So like the placebo is kind of like not that effective, but that shouldn't matter particularly, because we can, you can just give people lower doses of psilocybin, and then you can see, well, does having a bigger dose have better clinical effects than a lower dose, right? But yeah, it's hard to completely control and make it blind and nobody knows. When you get a placebo, yeah, you might think, oh, maybe I'm just tripping slightly. But when you get a high dose, most people tend to know, it's been obvious.
Definitely. But is there anything else, David, that you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up? Because I know you're busy.
Well, yeah, I've got to head off and give a talk soon. Yeah. I'd like to just hear a bit more from you, Timmy, about your experience and what you think you've got from the process, and any advice you give to anyone.
The only advice I'd give to anybody really would be make sure that you have the work done beforehand, and you do understand, like, if you have stuff that's really dark, you're really, really upsetting stuff that you'd never spoke about before to anybody, you can bet your life that stuff is going to come up.
Absolutely.
So be very, very mindful of that. And just trust in the process. And if you fight it, it could really, really bad you. This is something that's there to help you. And from the conversation we've just had here, it's really, really powerful stuff that these plant medicines are here for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and they've helped tribes of different people from the Amazon and Mexico to still be normal and still hold on to their traditions. And the reasons they do hold on to their traditions is based on their understanding of what life should really be. Whereas where we are here in Western world, like, I would not be able to take that phone out of my son's hand, whereas you have a child in Mexico, 5, 6, 7 years of age, and they're using plant medicines, and they're tuned in to life, so just really make sure that you have your work done beforehand. And just the integration of the session is very important, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the integration, because sometimes the information that you'll get can be really, really upfront. Just visualize the most forward person in your life and multiply that by 1,000. That's how this information comes to you. Yeah. It does not beat around the bush.
No, at all.
It doesn't sugarcoat. It's like, here you go. No. It doesn't try to help you after, or it doesn't come on over here now and I look after you, poor thing. It's not like that. It's like, here, and it's up to you to be able to manage it. I remember the first time I done the ayahuasca, the information was coming. It's like, I said, I have enough now. I don't know. And I was in a good place, and I just allowed it to come through me. And I just said, I had enough now, and it then went back into love.
Great.
Just loads of love.
Great.
And then healing. The green light, energy light, and come up through my body. And then the third night, then was purging for 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, beautiful.
Just knowing what it was, just knowing where it's coming from, and looking at, seeing memories of different stuff that had happened in my life, just flowing straight out of me, like, and
amazing.
It was absolutely amazing, yeah. So if someone's struggling at home, this is not this. You don't act impulsively and just go, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
You need to...
Takes a bit of preparation.
100%, and you will reap the benefits from that preparation too, What about you? Would you be able to give any bit of advice maybe on the same kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think some preparation. Do your homework, obviously, like, know what it is you're taking, what the effects are, where you're getting it from. Probably pay attention to where you're doing it and with who and what your frame of mind is. Like, probably want to have somebody sitting with you who's got some experience with this, and then a time for integration afterwards as well. Yeah. So think of it as a process, not just a trip, really. Yeah.
And a positive process as well. Something that's really there to help you if you allow it.
Yeah.
And you said, what are the benefits? The benefits, it has just changed my whole life. It's given me a broader understanding of life. We're human beings at the end of the day. you know, you're not going to change overnight. You're still going to fuck up, you know. We all fuck up.
We all do.
You know, but it'll allow you to not beat yourself up as much as we usually do beat ourselves up. I don't give myself a hard time like I did before.
That's great.
I just don't take life I just don't take it too serious as much as I did the year before. Right. So yeah, listen, I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise to me.
Because I don't really get enough of, I don't have enough of people in my life who I can have these conversations with. You know, I chat about this stuff with Tony, but it's great to have somebody like yourself who understands it in an intellectual level and can really break it down for people that don't know nothing about it here, you know. And I think this conversation was good, and it came from different levels, and we're very, very grateful for your time, and likewise. I mean that truly, Dave, so thank you so much. And Tony, anything to finish up with?
No, pretty good.
Yeah, it was great to have Tony's input here, because I always say Tony has a book of knowledge inside in his mind as well, and he has a lot to offer because he's a very, very intelligent guy.
Thanks, Tim.
And it was great to have you on board. And
the mic, first time having the mic in front of my face.
And you done really well.
So I hope I didn't interrupt too much.
Like a natural.
No, you done really well. I was saying we've no camera on you. If the camera was on you, we probably would have stopped it away. But listen, I just want to thank everybody for listening at home, and if anybody's interested in this stuff, do your research and try to find somebody that comes by recommendation, or you know, just be very careful who you do go with then as well, because we spoke earlier that this stuff has become commercialized, and you need the right people. And if you're looking for any recommendations, I can put one or two people in your direction, but only if you're ready. Again, don't email me if you're somebody, or question us if you're somebody who has a lot of work to do on yourself, you know, because that the reason I wouldn't be able to give you information is based on your well-being and what's good for you, not because I don't want to give it. So listen, thanks for listening. God bless, and we'll see you later. Thanks, Dave.
Cheers to me.
Thank you.